I do know one thing. There's going to be one side who's going to be brokenhearted.
If you want to have 15 beers, 32 shots of tequila, take an Uber.
Because that defendant right there chose to refuse to act like any reasonable law enforcement officer approaching a stranded citizen in help.
In courtrooms across America, some officers thought their word would be enough. But when the truth came out, judges and citizens weren't buying it. Judge Fleischer is known for cutting through weak arguments. And in this courtroom session, two very different cases land on his desk. One for DUI and another for criminal mischief.
You are Mr. Pavez Vargas.
Yes.
Sir, you're charged with driving while intoxicated. You are facing up to 6 months in jail and or a $2,000 fine. We are going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you, sir. You said that he 5 times failed to maintain a single lane of traffic. And you said that he slowed down and then he sped up.
Yes, Judge.
And what else? Because as far as the 5, that's just completely conclusory. So I take nothing with it, right? I mean, everybody slows down, goes back fast. So what else do you have as far as any kind of traffic infraction other than that?
But Fleischer isn't buying everything. He pushes back on the officer's vague claims, noting that slowing down or changing lanes isn't automatically probable cause.
After the emergency equipment was turned on, the suspect failed to pull over for approximately 2 minutes.
No.
The prosecution tries to salvage the case with mention of emergency lights and delay in stopping.
I don't know if he articulated more maybe in an OR, but there's just not much there. Only Blaze, I can give you a little bit of time if you want to try to pull the OR, maybe like 10, 15 minutes.
Para que miren a ver lo que hay. Otros 10 o 15 minutos. Porque no se mantuvo en una vía.
Okay. All right, Mr. Pavez Vargas, I'm going to find that there's no probable cause to go forward in your case. Sir, we have enough death and destruction on our streets as it is. Be mindful of this. If you want to have 15 beers, 32 shots of tequila, take an Uber. Save yourself the trouble. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Fleischer rules. No probable cause. The cops who made this report were probably the ones who were drinking a lot. Next up, a man accused of ripping a gas pump right off its base at a Chevron in Harris County, Texas. Damages, about $500.
Mr. Perez, you're charged with criminal mischief. You're facing up to 6 months in jail and or up to 6 months in jail and or a $2,000 fine. We're going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you, sir.
On August 23rd of 2024, officers were dispatched to a Chevron gas station in Harris County, Texas, in reference to criminal mischief. Officers made contact with the complaining witness, who stated that the defendant was at pump 2 and complained that his card was not working. The complaining witness stated he went outside with the defendant and saw that 25 cents had been pumped, then the transaction was canceled. CW told the defendant that he would have to use the card again to start another transaction. The defendant became irritated and the complaining witness made his way back into the store. The defendant followed him into the store, asked for $30 on pump 2, went out to his motor vehicle and began to pump gas. The defendant entered the motor vehicle with the pump still attached. $30 had been completed on the pump, then the defendant left without attempting to remove the pump, causing the pump and the hose to be separated from the in-ground meter. There were $500 in damages.
Did he mean to do it or was it an accident? Because remember, this is a specific intent crime. You didn't tell me anything that he's like upset to where he intentionally took off with the device.
I understand, Judge.
You know?
I'm just reading based on what the offense report said. It says the complaining witness did not see him even attempt to remove the pump.
I know, but people forget. You know, you're busy, you get this, like, you know, accidents happen, right? But if you're telling me that he's like flipping it off, giving him the bird, yelling at him, and then he just, but I don't see the intent.
I pulled up the offense report.
There's no rush. Take your time. And if you want, we can come back and do this a little bit later so we can do everything else and then give you more time. You want to do that?
I'm looking through it, Judge, and I don't see that. We can come back to it.
Okay, sir, I'm just going to have you take a seat. I'm going to do a deeper dive in your case, just to see if there is probable cause. If you just don't mind, please take a seat in the jury box and we'll come back.
I say,
No, don't. You have the right to remain silent. Exercise the right. As we all know, criminal mischief is a specific intent crime, right? The facts, as we read this criminal mischief, I don't see intent. I may be wrong, but what I see is that I have a gentleman, he gets kind of frustrated that the thing is not working correctly. The pump. So he goes in, pays $30 for prepaid gas, goes out, pumps the gas, and takes off. And I guess in thereby ripping the thing. But is it a mistake? Did he specifically intend to do that? You tell me. What do you?
one moment, Judge.
Take your time.
Fleischer even consults another prosecutor for a second opinion, who agreed that this looks more like a mistake than a crime.
Judge, I don't see anything per the DIMS nor the offense report that connects specific intent to this defendant.
What was it again? What was your last name again?
Perez, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Perez, I'm going to find that there's no probable cause to go forward with the case. Understand that this means that I just didn't think that there was intent to rise up for a crime. Whether they come after you still for that, who knows? But
Following dismissal, Judge.
thanks. If you want to go ahead, well, they're going to dismiss the case now, so you're free to go. Okay,
Just with this bond, I had a cash bond, so
I don't know.
that's what you are. Thank you very much.
Go back and if you want, we can give you a copy of the dismissal here shortly.
The case is dismissed. The man walks free, though the gas station might still go after him for damages. Judge Fleischer refuses to rubber stamp weak cases. Next up, a woman in Texas faces a terroristic threat charge, all because of a text to her sister.
The complaining witness and the defendant are sisters, and complaining witness say the defendant is not allowed to go into a residence. The complaining witness's son mistakenly let the defendant and her husband in, and they drank the beer. The complaining witness texted the defendant about her being in the residence, and the defendant responded with threatening messages that said the defendant will slap CW and show up slap the complaining witness and show up at the complaining witness's job. The complaining witness stated she feared for her safety.
What the hell does that mean? It's got to be serious bodily injury, man. Or
Yes, Judge.
are we putting everybody in jail now for whatever?
Judge, that's really all I have.
Statute.
Judge, the message that the defendant sent to complaining witness states exactly, bitch, don't talk out your ass because I will go to your house and slap you in front of your family. I'll even come to your job.
Not imminent serious bodily injury. Come on. All right, I'm gonna find no probable cause, ma'am. As the old adage says, sticks and stones, right? Words will never hurt. They actually can. You have to be careful what you say, who you say it to, because it could end you could end up in hot water. I'm gonna find no probable cause in this case. The idea also is that if you don't have a good relationship with someone, it's probably best not to just inject yourself repeatedly in there because you're asking for trouble,
Right.
I mean, you now know. All right, man, please, just be careful, all right?
The prosecutor lays it out, but Judge Fleischer isn't convinced, so the answer is clear. Case dismissed. What started as a family argument almost became jail time until the judge shut it down. Now, we move on to a case back from October 2015, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, where 31-year-old church drummer Corey Jones found himself stranded on the highway, waiting for a tow. What happens next will spark outrage across the country and bring Raja into this courtroom.
It's because that defendant right there chose to refuse to act like any reasonable law enforcement officer approaching a stranded citizen in help. That is why Corey Jones died that evening. He recklessly created a situation which could only be expected to result in somebody being seriously injured or killed. And all the evidence is going to show three things at the end of this trial. It's going to show that that defendant shot and killed Corey Jones. It's going to show that he at no time acted like a law enforcement officer. And it's going to show that he is guilty as charged of manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder with a firearm. This isn't just a tragic story. This is a tragedy that was created. It was created by him. It resulted in an innocent man being killed. Corey Jones was doing nothing except waiting for help on the side of the road because his SUV broke down. And one of the few people that should have unquestionably been there to assist him on the side of that road did exactly the opposite. Instead of being Corey Jones' saving grace, he was his angel of death. The evidence will show that there's no way Corey Jones knew, even at the time that he was running, fleeing from the back of his vehicle, running into the dark, seeking cover, laying there on the ground, dying, breathing his last breath. No way that he knew that the person that actually shot and killed him was a law enforcement officer. And instead of doing what everybody would expect a law enforcement officer to do when they're approaching a stranded, potentially abandoned, but at least a vehicle that's stranded on the side of the road, that defendant did everything wrong. He did everything that you would not expect. He's driving an unmarked white van, and he comes along, and he goes up the wrong way of an I-95 exit ramp. He goes up the wrong way. He cuts right in front of Corey Jones' SUV as it's parked. He positions himself diagonally, front end to front end of Corey Jones' vehicle, with their bumpers mere feet apart.
Raja wasn't acting like a cop, he was acting like a threat. Corey never even knew Raja was an officer. He was running for his life in the dark, not from the law, but from a stranger who pulled up in jeans and a t-shirt.
And instead of doing what anybody would expect and conducting a regular stop, getting behind the SUV, pulling all the way in front, he is blocking 2 lanes of traffic that are coming off of that interstate with an unmarked van. He jumps out. He's got no indication whatsoever he's a law enforcement officer. He's wearing jeans. He's wearing an inside-out t-shirt, a hat, no badge, nothing. And what does he do? Well, you're going to know what he does because you're going to hear it. And he tells you to. He runs around the front of that van and immediately becomes confrontational with Corey Jones. It's going to show all the evidence builds up. It's absolutely ridiculous what he did. It's grossly negligent when you talk under the law. It's just flat out reckless. That's what he chose to do. That was his decision with one only expected outcome. You got Corey Jones stranded in a vehicle waiting for a tow truck, and this is what he gets confronted with 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, Corey Jones, he's got an expensive junkie. He goes into not the nicest parts of Delray Beach for his job. So he did what any lawful American can do. He purchased a firearm, .380 handgun. You can't even try to create the situation that came about. He got that gun 2 days prior to this event. It was still in the box in his glove compartment. But as soon as that defendant recklessly pulls up to him at 3 o'clock in the morning, in the way that he did, that gun came out of that box. Corey Jones knew what was exactly about to happen. What any reasonable person could expect to happen. You'll show through the evidence today and through the next 2 weeks what Corey Jones was thinking. You'll hear how Corey Jones had that gun out of that box. You'll hear the chimes of the door opening from Corey Jones' SUV because he still had the keys in the ignition. And you'll hear the last words that Corey Jones ever spoke in this world. They weren't confrontational words. They weren't fighting words. They were calm words that unfortunately turned to fear. Because there's the defendant. Nothing that shows he's an officer. He didn't even pull out the badge, which was in his wallet, in his back pocket, to show to Corey Jones. Much less put on that vest that said police, or even had his radio or his gun. There's no verbal identification that you're going to hear on that recording when Corey Jones was talking to that sales representative that had to sit there and witness this horrific event unfold. There's nothing but an overly aggressive and immediately hostile attitude. You hear it for yourselves. You make the decision. You're the judges of the credibility of everybody, including him. Because you will hear from him. You'll hear, when he jumps out of that van, you'll hear something fast, real short, and Corey Jones' response is, huh? I'm good. That's his response. With as much effect as that. And what's the response from our law enforcement officer on duty that's supposed to be helping a stranded citizen? Really? Yeah, I'm good. Really? That's what he's saying. That's not how an officer talks to a citizen if they're talking to one on the side of the road. But that's how he spoke to what he saw with Corey Jones on the side of that road. All the while, when he's saying this, when you listen to this tape, realize things didn't stop. We're not all of a sudden just done with action. As this defendant is saying these words to Corey Jones, and Corey Jones is responding back, he's getting closer and closer to Corey Jones. He's actually chasing Corey Jones away from his vehicle. Corey's already retreating back out of his doorway to the back of his vehicle. A citizen that's stranded on the side of the road, already being chased from his vehicle by an officer who's sitting there saying, really? And when Corey Jones laughs and says, yeah, now he starts saying even more hostile. Get your fucking hands up! Get your fucking hands up! That's what he's screaming. That's how he's treating a stranded citizen. Immediately within seconds, that's what he's saying. You know, profane words being shouted at a time.
Corey wasn't fighting, he was fleeing, terrified. By now, Raja is shouting more commands, even as Corey is already retreating. Each new detail shows distance growing between them, but Raja never stops shooting.
And what does Corey say? He doesn't respond in kind with profanity. He says, hold on, hold on. Once again, get your effing hands up. Drop. 3 shots. Corey's running away. He's already retreating behind his vehicle. Physical evidence shows 3 shots. He chose to fire out of that gun because of the way that he acted. He was aggressive from the start. He immediately began chasing Corey Jones, and he never initially saw a gun. The words that he was speaking, show me your effing hands. Get your effing hands up. didn't see what was in the hands. Not until Corey Jones was already being chased behind his vehicle. And when a law enforcement officer is yelling that at anybody, you know what he already had pulled out of his belly holster as a backup weapon in his hand. That's what Corey Jones was confronted with. He didn't choose it. He didn't ask for it. It got thrust upon him by the person that was supposed to be caring for his safety. He made a decision to shoot first and ask questions later. That was his decision. But see, this isn't the end of the story. Because now Corey Jones is running for his life. He is running for the cover of darkness. He's thrown down the gun already that he had in his hand that was meant to protect him. And you got 10 seconds. Because he didn't stop shooting. No, he kept shooting. But you got 10 seconds. That doesn't sound like a long time. When you sit there and you look at that clock and you hear those seconds tick away, and you consider that Corey Jones is running for his life after being shot at on the side of the road, that's forever. 10 seconds between the third and the fourth shot. 10 seconds for a young man running for the cover of darkness. 10 seconds for that defendant right there to finally do what he is supposed to do as a law enforcement officer.
The evidence shows Raja fires again, and it was deliberate. One shot, then another, each one measured. It proves these weren't panicked, split-second choices. They were calculated.
Am I hunting a human being? That is no longer recklessness. That is no longer just in the heat of the moment. That is now premeditated intent with one specific desire, and that was to kill Corey Jones. He fired those last 3 shots at 1 second intervals each. Control. Boom! 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 Not fast, but controlled. Once again, he's got an opportunity to act like a cop. Finally. Instead, he proves himself to be that bad exception that disgraces a badge that men and women wear. He waits over 30 seconds. 30 seconds to call 911. And why was he calling 911? Because he didn't have his radio on him like he's supposed to. He had to use his own phone to call 911, and he waited 30 seconds to call. Before getting medical assistance for Corey Jones, before getting much needed assistance, if he was truly in fear of his life, well, he needs to call a cavalry. 30 seconds. Doing what? And that's what the judge is going to instruct you on when he tells you and explains what's necessary for us to prove manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder. You're going to hear the law. It's manslaughter means Corey Jones is dead, and it's by the culpable negligence or act of that defendant. And he's going to explain to you, the judge will tell you what culpable negligence means. He's going to say it means a course of conduct showing a reckless disregard for human life or the safety of other persons exposed to its dangerous effects of conscious indifference to the consequences. I couldn't have thought up better words to explain exactly what he did. From the time he chose to go that wrong way, that's what it is. Attempted first-degree murder. We've got to show that he did some act intended to cause the death of Corey Jones with a premeditated design to kill Corey Jones, and that it would have resulted in the death of Corey Jones, but he failed. And I'm going to explain that. You see, he was reckless from the start. He created the situation. The evidence is going to show you that he could have only expected one result. The death of Corey Jones. And that's manslaughter. It doesn't matter if we're bad. It doesn't matter if You're homeless. It's manslaughter. But see, he doesn't get a free pass under the law for those last 3 shots. The last 3 shots that he waited 10 seconds to deliver. And took 1 second intervals in between each one. The law doesn't give him a free pass for those shots. It doesn't give him a free pass for that now fully formed, premeditated attempt to kill Corey Jones. You see, those last 3 shots are entirely different. Because now, he wanted to do one thing. End Corey's life. Period. Corey was shot through the heart. He actually had his heart destroyed by that bullet, which is horrifically symbolic, saying that this young man lost his life because he lost his heart. You're going to hear a medical examiner come up here, forensic pathologist, and explain to you all the injuries that Corey Jones sustained. He was shot in the left forearm. Fractured the bone in his forearm to the point where it compounded. It came out of his skin. He was shot in the back of the arm, the back of this arm, on the right side of the upper arm, and went through right out. He was shot in the right side of his chest, and that bullet ripped through his body, destroyed his aorta, and lodged into his left shoulder. That bullet resulted in his death. There wasn't any coming back. And medical examiner is going to tell you that it also resulted in his relatively immediate incapacitation. He could move a couple yards, maybe 10, 20 feet after receiving that, but then he was dropping dead.
This wasn't just reckless policing. It was manslaughter and attempted murder. A bullet tore through Corey's heart. Other rounds broke his arm, pierced his chest, and ended his life almost instantly. Medical evidence left no room for doubt. Corey Jones never stood a chance.
You'll hear about how the defendant had zero indication whatsoever that he was a law enforcement officer. Zero way to identify him when those first responders showed up. You'll hear how he even tells those first responders that he saw Corey run away and throw his gun behind the SUV. His words. In the moment as first responders are showing up. You'll hear the dispatch. But here's 911 call. You're going to see a transcript from that 911 call. You'll hear that even after 30 seconds of that defendant thinking about what he was going to say, he starts off the 911 call. 30 seconds after that 6th shot, how do you think he's going to start off? He starts off by screaming, "Drop that effing gun right now." 30 seconds after the 6th shot. Corey Jones is dead. And that's how he starts off the call with 911. Why is that? Because he's had 30 seconds to think about it. The gun's already been thrown behind the SUV. He even tells the sergeant about that. You'll hear him tell the 911 operator, Corey came out of the handgun, the defendant gave him commands and identified himself as a law enforcement officer, and Corey began to run, so I shot him. You're going to hear his words, you're going to see it plain as day in a 911 transcript. You will not, absolutely not, hear him identify himself at any time. Because see, what he didn't know was that bone of Corey Jones was laying there on his forehead and recording everything that happened. He had no idea about that. He thought that his 911 call would be the first thing that anybody heard that was reported. He didn't know that there was another recording. You hear about all the evidence of the crime scene. You hear about casings that came out of his firearm. You hear about the gun of Corey Jones, the chrome 380. empty oil bottles from Matthew Huntsberger. You'll see the gun of Corey Jones is 70 feet behind his car. 125 feet away from his car. It shows the flight that Corey Jones was taken away from his vehicle. Fight or flight. Corey made the decision. It was flight. He didn't make it. You'll see pictures of the van pulled up to the SUV less than 7 feet away. Who pulls up like that? Not a law enforcement officer. And you'll hear about the investigation. Attempts, admittedly, by investigators to try to show how could this defendant over here see that gun? Well, it's a shiny silver gun. Maybe something reflected off of it. So, of course, it's not singularly focused on trying to prove somebody guilty. It's focused on trying to find out what the evidence is. So, of course, can we show that? Yeah, sure, it's a shiny gun. Of course, light's going to reflect off. That means nothing as to where that gun was pointed or what it was doing. It just means that it was a gun that he maybe saw some light reflected off of it. You'll hear about the detail that that defendant was supposed to be working when he was supposed to be identifying himself as a law enforcement officer. You'll hear about all the CSI and crime scene folks that came in. Even the FBI came in to assist, research the area, provide expert analysis of the evidence. The gun of Corey Jones, the guns of the defendant were analyzed, the clothes of the defendant was analyzed. All of this you're going to hear about. DNA, fingerprints, in an attempt to try to make sense of what he did, what he chose to do. Months of investigation to try to make sense of it. Sometimes it just is what it is. And in this sense, it's a crime. You're going to hear from that defendant right there. You're going to see him, and you're going to hear his own words. You see, he made a statement that morning. He provided a statement to law enforcement hours after the shooting. An officer involved shooting, that time was common practice. Explain what you did, why you needed to use deadly force. He didn't know about that phone call that was being recorded. He had no idea that that was all actually recorded. And so you're going to hear about how inconsistent that statement he provided is with the phone call, with the physical evidence on the scene, and even with other statements that he made. Because the evidence is going to show that by that point, after having hours of reflection, he was now refining that story that he had created to explain why he just killed an innocent civilian. He says, yeah, you know what? I was supposed to put my vest on when I got a traffic stop. I didn't. That was wrong. Yeah, I screwed up. I should have acted like it was a vehicle and conducted any other traffic stop. I didn't. That was wrong. He admits he's not doing the things that he knows he should for the safety of himself and for the safety of every lawful citizen who depends on officers. He says, Corey Jones jumps out of the vehicle immediately, says, I'm okay. He says, police. And what did Corey do? According to him, during his statement, Corey jumps back and puts the gun at him. And now he's afraid for his life. That's what he says in his statement. That's not what happened. That's not what you hear in the AT&T recorded call from the roadside assistance folks. But that's what he knows and he has to say in order to excuse his reckless conduct.
The prosecutor here shows how his story shifted, first to dispatch, then in statements after the fact. Investigators say it didn't add up. His account conflicted with recordings, ballistics, and witness testimony.
In order to justify his premeditated intent. He says where he fired those first 3 shots is absolutely not match up with the physical evidence. He says he got caught right there between that van and that SUV, and that's where he fired his first 3 shots. Not true. Absolutely 100% false. Those shell casings that came out of his gun are behind Corey's SUV. He had already chased Corey behind his vehicle before he ever fired his first 3 shots. He even says he calls 911 right after those first 3 shots, before he fired shots 4, 5, and 6. Absolutely not true. But see, in his mind, he was going along with that story he created when he first called up 911. He says how now Corey Jones twists and turns and he thinks Corey's going to shoot him again, so he had to shoot 3 more times. These are his words. He also says how he practices pulling out his belly gun, so it's real fast. That is potentially believable. But there's a difference. There's a huge difference between misremembering something and just flat out being untruthful. There's a huge difference between trying to think about what happened and intentionally saying something to help you get away with what you did. We've all seen it. Whether it's with kids, whether it's with family, coworkers, we all seen it. And you're going to see it again when you watch him give that statement that morning. You get to judge his credibility. With great power comes great responsibility. We choose to do this. We choose to take on that great power and that great responsibility. He chose to do it. You get to decide whether or not what he said was credible. Which ones are irrefutable? That recording is irrefutable. And who has a less than credible reason to tell you something that actually accords with the evidence that you'll see? You see, you're going to be presented with all the evidence that you need to convict. You're going to see all the physical evidence. You're going to hear all the witnesses. And it's all going to point, all the credible evidence is going to point to one thing: his guilt. You're going to even have more evidence than you need. We're confident that you're going to agree on the one verdict for which all the evidence will support. And that's a verdict finding him guilty as charged of being a reckless killer and for trying to murder Corey Jones. We're going to ask you to hold him responsible for how he misused that power.
For the jury, the question was simple. Was this reckless policing or cold intent to kill? For Corey Jones's family, the answer was already clear. He was a son, a brother, a musician, and he should still be alive today. Next up, after days of testimony, the jury has reached its verdict.
We got 6 people that were plucked out of their normal lives, just sitting at home eating a sandwich one day, and they got a card in the mail that said, "You got to come to the courthouse." They're just regular folks just like the rest of us. And they got thrust into this situation. I have no idea what's going to happen right now. I do know one thing. There's going to be one side who's going to be brokenhearted. One side's going to be brokenhearted. We know that for sure. What I ask everybody, and then I follow it up with I'm ordering, that I am respectful that this is the most pressure-packed moment for most people in their entire lives. I don't want to hear a peep. So when the verdict comes in, and to whatever side's brokenhearted, if you don't think you can take it, I need you to step out in the hallway, because nobody will run out of this courtroom while I'm taking this verdict. As soon as the 6 jurors are out of the courtroom, you're free to get up, walk out. please, my job, and I think everybody's picked up on it, how respectful and polite I am to everybody. But when I'm forced to, I bite. I just want peace for these 6 people to get out of here, and then whatever the verdict is, we'll deal with it after they have been excused. Okay. So let's bring in the jury. Jury, All right, everybody have a seat. Jurors, I'm going to take things out of order here. I want you to listen. One last instruction I have to give to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about your work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request may come from those who are simply curious or from those who might seek to find fault with you. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. Now, when you're being escorted out today, if you want to say, listen, I want to break off and stand in front of the courthouse and talk about this case, you're free to do so. But you're also free to say, I've done my service and I'm leaving. If anybody harasses you, I want to know. When you leave, I'm going to give you you're going to be handed a packet. In the packet is a certificate of appreciation. Inside the envelope is a letter evidencing your jury work that I mentioned a very long time ago. If anybody has a problem with an employer, let me know. Also, there's the anonymous questionnaire. It's a way for you to write back to me and tell me, Judge, this is what I liked, this is what I didn't like. Does all of you have your personal belongings? Everything you've gathered, everything up? They're in the jury room? Okay. Now, juror number 2, Randall, I believe you have the verdict form. Is that correct? If you please pass it to Deputy Dunkley. Mr. Clerk, publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 15th Judicial Circuit in and for Palm Beach County, Florida, Criminal Division, Division X, case number 2016 CF 005507 AMB, State of Florida, plaintiff versus Newman Khan Raja, defendant, verdict. We, the jury, find as follows. As to count 1, we find the defendant guilty of manslaughter while armed with a firearm as charged in the information. As to count 2, we found a defendant guilty of attempted first-degree murder as charged in the information. If you find a defendant guilty of attempted first-degree murder, you must next answer the following questions. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant actually possessed a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant actually discharged a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant in discharging the firearm actually caused great bodily harm or death to Corey L. Jones? Yes. So say we all, the 7th day of March, 2019, in West Palm Beach County, Florida, signed, jury, 4-person.
Poll the jury.
Juror number 1, were the verdicts is read your verdict? Juror number 2, were the verdicts is read your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 3, were the verdicts is read your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 4, were the verdicts is read your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 5, were the verdicts is read your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 6, were the verdicts is read your verdicts?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You're excused. Follow the deputies.
The judge remands Numan Raja into custody with no bond, pending sentencing. With that, Raja becomes the first Florida officer in decades convicted for an on-duty killing. For Corey Jones's family, justice had finally spoken. But nothing could be worse than the time when a female cop ran over a biker. Click this next video to find out how that ends.
If you want to take it to court, I'll be there.
Will you tell the truth in court, or are you gonna lie like you're lying now?
Swear to first.
Bag piece of. Dude, I have 100 videos of you guys doing that. You don't get in trouble. You're a liar.